The events that affect us most are often the ones that happen closest to home.
The things that are probably more valuable, you can go and buy again. It's things that you can't replace.
The school's been destroyed, but I can assure you that the heart is still in the people here.
To hear outsiders calling us scum is a bit beyond a joke, because I've lived here all my life, and I'm no scum.
I think about my son every time I look in the mirror. It's something that's there forever, but you're going to lose your lives if you keep on doing it.
I'm 52, I'll never get a job. I'll go for retraining, but is there a job at the end of it? I don't think so.
It's not the same as going to your tap and turning it on, is it?
BBC Regional News, because what's happening on your doorstep is often as important as what's happening around the world. The BBC, regional news at its best.
What makes a woman long for marriage to a man with whom she can only have the most extraordinary relationship?
43-year-old Linda Hayes has 5 grown-up children and 7 grandchildren. She is one of a considerable number of women who choose to start relationships with men serving long prison sentences. Marie Curtis has only met her husband once outside prison, and that was when she married him. Julie's fiancé Keith is now nearing the end of a life sentence for aggravated burglary.
So just what is it that makes dangerous men in prison so very desirable? 40 Minutes discovers, tomorrow at 9:50.
Tonight on The Late Show, the artists Stalin ordered to be engineers of the human soul. We reassess the art of Soviet realism. The French author and civil servant Eric Orsena talks about the novel that won him France's most prestigious literary award. And there's performance from leading British dance companies, the Chumleys and the Fanshaws. That's The Late Show, after Newsnight.
Care in the community sounds great. It sounds really nice. People are going out, the community looked after them. It sounds great. But it needs money.
Good evening. It's been a policy shared by all the major political parties, but is the implementation of care in the community betraying the mentally ill people it's supposed to benefit? We have a special report on the way some of the most vulnerable members of society are being sent to wander the streets, sleep rough, or somehow get by in squalid surroundings. I'll be suggesting to the Health Minister, Stephen Dorrell, that the government's simply not bothered enough to do better by them. This week, the Cabinet decide on what they hope will be an election-winning budget. But how would tax cuts paid for out of higher public borrowing square with those Victorian ideals of financial prudence Mrs. Thatcher espoused? We'll hear the conflicting answers of 3 would-be MPs whose fortunes will be decided by the outcome of the general election. And the remains of Haile Selassie, Emperor of Ethiopia, Lion of Judah, are discovered buried under the floorboards of a palace latrine. How did he meet his death? I'll be asking his great-grandson, Sebastianus Baeni. Everyone agrees that the best place for psychiatric treatment is in the community rather than in the huge asylums built by the Victorians. That's been the policy of successive governments, Labour and Conservative, for 30 years. And yet the number of mentally ill sleeping rough on our streets bears testimony to the failure to get it right. An extra £8 million was allocated last month to help in London, and elsewhere health authorities are being urged to set up halfway hostels, though without any additional funding. There'll be new arrangements and a £15 million increase in grant when the Community Care Act comes in next year. But professionals doubt whether they'll cure a problem which affects cities across the land. Sue Pennington has a sometimes disturbing report from Oxford.
I think we'll have a run down to Pond Square things. The local shopkeepers have been complaining down there that they're hanging around their shop doorways. And obviously putting customers off going into the shop, so we'll have a look down there first of all.
In the centre of Oxford, the police are making one of their regular patrols.
Sometimes there's some on this corner, but there's
This is not crime fighting, it's social
Got
policing.
one there with his red woolly hat on over by the bank. He's behaving himself at the moment.
It's about spotting disturbing behaviour and identifying people who need help.
We've got the gentleman, it looks like in fact he might be having a fit. So I think we better go and see what we can do here. We have a fight taking place or a fit. Just hold his head down.
More and more police time is spent dealing with problems caused by the homeless on the streets.
No, don't have a drink. Wait.
Very often, the police are the only people keeping track of the homeless when all other agencies have failed.
He's had a fit. We're not quite sure if it's an epileptic fit or due to withdrawal symptoms from alcohol. He said that he was at the doctor's this morning and that's why he hasn't had a drink all morning. At the moment, we're trying to persuade him to go to hospital to get some treatment there.
The man didn't want to go to hospital. They had no choice but to leave him there. The police deal with many instances like this, and increasingly mixed up with drunks and addicts displaying worrying behaviour are the mentally ill released from psychiatric hospitals.
Very often we will take people into custody under the Mental Health Act for their own or other people's safety. Again, as my colleague said, we are not expert medical people. We would in that case call in the doctors and social workers and they would be examined to see if they are mentally ill badly enough to be certified and to be detained in hospital. Very often that doesn't happen, and then we are left with the decision. We have a person who, in our opinion, shouldn't be out on the streets, but there's nowhere for them to go. We obviously endeavour to try to get them into places like the night shelter, but they're not going to receive any sort of treatment there, so it's a problem. They just go straight back out onto the streets again.
This is the night shelter. All it offers is a roof for the night and a solid meal. The dirt and smell of the street follow people in.
Okay. Do you want some clips on?